What is up, my fellow andronauts? Have you ever considered using TRT to supercharge your natural testosterone production? Right? That does not make sense. But I want to make a strong case why short-term TRT can actually be helpful for supercharging your natural testosterone production via multiple ways. And most of the questions you might have, is it long-term? Should I be using it? Is it something that's worthwhile? Like all of these questions you might have, I'm going to discuss in this video. So let's dive in. So for starters, if someone is unhealthy, they don't have much energy or motivation to eat right and be active. And these individuals tend to have low testosterone as well. So should you be focusing on doing it naturally, or should you go on TRT? Then what about TRT, right? Is TRT for life, or is it temporary? And what about, can you use it temporarily to supercharge your natural status? And a lot of people think that when I choose TRT, I have to be on it for life. But I'm going to tell you that you don't have to be on it for life. And I'm going to show you how you can actually use it temporarily to supercharge your own gains. Is TRT really suppressive? Of course, TRT is suppressive. When you use it, you inject yourself with exogenous testosterone, it's going to lower LH. Is that bad? That is debatable. No. When you do a TRT, which is a natural replacement of your natural levels, suppressing yourself temporarily does not lead to side effects long term. Can you recover your T after TRT? Yes. Now I'm going to show you something fantastic, show you that you can actually supercharge your own T after using TRT, but you have to do it the right way to see the best results. So what plays into the role of recovery after TRT? So like the TRT modality that you are using plays a big role. Are you using topical? Are you using injection? What kind of injection? Are you using a pellet? Those kind of stuff. TRT modality. The state of health after your TRT. And then the use of other steroids while on TRT. And those three things are the three main things that play a role in how effectively you will recover after you've been on TRT. So let's discuss each one of them. So the first one is the TRT modality, and the first one is injection. And the thing that plays the role here is the ester length. And so most doctors actually prescribe cypionate or enanthate. But some doctors like to recommend undecoinate. And so that's a very long ester, which means that it stays in your system a very long time. So you can see on this graph here, this beautiful graph that I created, that the undecoinate stays the longest in your system, right? So the longer something stays in your system, the longer it will suppress you, because that's how long the exogenous testosterone is in your system. So let's say you're using, I compared here testosterone, undecoinate, cypionate, enanthate, and propionate. So propionate has the shortest half-life, and then followed by enanthate, cypionate, and the last one is undecoinate. And I divide it into weeks. So here's baseline, 0.5 weeks, 1 week, 2, 3, 4 weeks. So you can see. Right, so let's say you use a dose, and each one of these takes you to 700 nanograms per deciliter. And then within half a week, your testosterone will be back to hypogonadal 300 when you use propionate. And then it will be back to baseline, the half-life for cypionate or enanthate, basically with 1 week. And then for undecoinate, it's 4 weeks. Right, so it stays in your system a very long time. So depending on what you're using, this will determine how quickly you're going to recover. Because the longer the testosterone is in your system, the longer you're going to take to recover. So this is why recovering from undecoinate will be so much longer than from enanthate. And it's not like this linear drop in testosterone, it's more like a angular drop, right? So like the inverse of exponential. And so this makes recovery a little bit longer, and this is why they recommend doing a PCT, which is post-cycle therapy, for at least 4 weeks. And this is when you stop steroids in general. So when you stop steroids, which is obviously much larger doses, at least 4 to 8 weeks that you do a PCT. So when you come off of TRT, depending on the ester that you've used, how long that testosterone will stay in your system, that will determine how long you will be suppressed. So it could be 2 weeks, it could be 4 weeks, it could be 6 weeks, depending on what you've been using. Then we have topical. You can see the half-life of topical is much shorter, and time on this graph is in hours and not weeks. And so let's say you use the high dose, which is 15 milligrams. 15 milligrams should take you close to 700 nanograms per deciliter. And then it's out of your system in roughly like 30-something hours. So it's like a little bit more than 24 hours. before you're back to hypogonadal range. So the half-life is much shorter. It doesn't stay in your system that long when you use topical. So that means when you use topical testosterone and you come off, you will recover much faster because the testosterone is not in your system that long. And then intranasal testosterone is in your system the shortest, and also oral. I didn't include oral testosterone here because it's more or less the same as intranasal, just a little bit longer. So intranasal, as you can see in this graph, you're using intranasal testosterone, boom, it spikes you to 800 within the first 40 minutes, and then it's back to hypogonadal within 4 hours. So you have to use testosterone like 3 to 4 times a day to maintain somewhat of a high testosterone level, but you can see like this ups and downs and ups and downs. So you're multiple times during the day, you're having high T, low T, high T, low T. So this is an awful way to maintain high levels of testosterone. And this is why I don't really like intranasal testosterone as a long-term modality, but it can still improve low testosterone symptoms. But the point here is that when your testosterone is dropping, right, you will see your LH going up. They have like this inverse correlation. Testosterone is going up, LH is going down, testosterone is going down, LH is coming up. They work exactly like that. And so the faster testosterone is out of your system, the faster your LH will increase. So people that do intranasal testosterone, they're basically not suppressed at all. Because let's say 50% of the day you have high testosterone, and then the other 50% of the day you have low testosterone. But then that other 50%, your LH is back to normal. So 50% of the day you have normal LH when you're using intranasal testosterone. So technically you're not even suppressed. So this is the whole point. Like if you're using a long ester, you're going to be long-term suppressed. If you're using intranasal, you're going to be suppressed for a couple of hours. And then LH is coming back up. So this will determine how quickly you can recover after testosterone. And then the state of health after TRT. What have you been doing while you're on TRT? Have you been doing what you have always been doing? Couch potato, eating junk, doing nothing, right? Have you been losing weight? Have you been fixing your insulin sensitivity? Have you been fixing sleep apnea? Have you been consuming a diet rich in vitamins and minerals? That will ensure that you're producing your own testosterone effectively enough. If you've been doing all of those and then you stop TRT, you're obviously in a healthier state after TRT. So your testosterone will automatically be higher because you're in a healthier state after TRT. And then the third thing is the use of other steroids while you've been doing TRT. So this is probably not most people, but some people's like, hey man, I'm using some TRT. I like the way my body is changing. I have some goals for the way I want to look. I'm going to throw some other stuff on top of there, maybe an oral, maybe DECA, some synergistic steroid. Maybe I'm going to go a little bit higher TRT. I'm not going to go like replacing with 100 milligrams TRT. I'm going to go a little bit higher, like 500 milligrams, for example, like more like a bodybuilder cycle for testosterone. On top of that, 400 milligrams of DECA. On top of that, 100 milligrams oral Anavar or something like that, right? All of those factors will determine how you will recover afterwards. So the bigger doses that you're using for the longer will make that you recover slower in general. This is not obviously for everyone, but when you use large doses of different synthetic steroids and you're mixing and matching, this will generally suppress you for longer. And also steroids can be toxic to the testes, which in over time can damage the testes, so you're just producing less testosterone the longer you do it. How can TRT supercharge your results? So I'm going to show you this. This was a very interesting animal study where they used young animals and aged animals. And you can see on the graph here, the young animals had higher testosterone than the aged animals. And then they gave them TRT. You can see their endogenous own testosterone production tanked completely on testosterone, which makes sense. And then after testosterone, they came off of the testosterone. The aged animals had a big increase in their own testosterone. So after TRT, they had higher levels of testosterone compared to before TRT, right? So they stopped the TRT and their testosterone was higher than before. So it clearly showed that the exogenous testosterone, the TRT, actually improved their Leydig cells to the point where they were making more testosterone after coming off of TRT. So this is number one reason why TRT can actually supercharge your progress. So how can TRT increase your testosterone? Well, it can do so by reducing oxidative stress, reactive oxygen species. And so your the mitochondria in your testes is responsible for the production of pregnenolone. And then mitochondria consumes about 90% of the oxygen consumed and taken up by cells. And in the process, the mitochondria is also a major source of reactive oxygen species. It's spitting it off. It's a natural process. And if someone is not in a healthy state, that reactive oxygen species will then start to damage the Leydig cells. The proteins, the lipids, the enzymes, it will start to damage it. And then you get, slowly over time, your Leydig cells doesn't work effectively anymore. So basically what happens is that testosterone, even from an exogenous source, it enhances Leydig cell health by reducing oxidative stress. And putting Leydig cells in hibernation with TRT improves its function after coming off of TRT. Because in the meanwhile, so testosterone is an antioxidant in itself. It helps to reduce oxidative stress. But also by suppressing yourself, putting your Leydig cells in hibernation, you reduce the production of reactive oxygen species, right? So you provide more antioxidants and you reduce the amount of reactive oxygen species production. Your body can actually start to regenerate the Leydig cells if you do this correctly. And so the point is that the whole goal here is to reduce reactive oxygen species. You don't want an excess amount of reactive oxygen species in the testes. And so you can use other compounds. You don't have to use testosterone to do this. You can use other compounds like taurine, coenzyme Q10, vitamin E, carnosine, anzurin, zinc, selenium, etc., that are strong antioxidants that accumulate in the testes and that will protect the testes against reactive oxygen species, heavy metals, pesticides, mold, fungi, endotoxin, all of the bad stuff that want to lower your levels of testosterone. And all of these nutrients, you get those from an animal-based diet. Eating a diet rich in animal foods, eggs, dairy, organ meat, shellfish, like all of the good stuff, dairy, etc. So all of the stuff that I discussed in the Testo Launch course. If you want to structure your diet to maximize testosterone, be sure to get the Testo Launch diet. Point number 2, how TRT can supercharge your progress is by giving you motivation, energy. It helps with fat loss, it improves your mood, it improves insulin sensitivity. So mentioned in the beginning, people that have low levels of testosterone, they're not as motivated, they don't have a lot of energy, they usually got more fat mass, they're not really in a good mood, and all of those stuff in synergy will reduce your testosterone as well. And so you don't have the motivation to be active, you don't have the motivation to eat right. And so by taking testosterone, you get that, and then you start by doing the right stuff. While on TRT, you become more active. You lose excess weight if necessary, and you start eating a testosterone-boosting diet as I laid out in the Testo Launch course. You do this while on TRT so that you can improve your health, that after TRT, when you get off, you're in a much better place. So you use TRT to supercharge you with energy and motivation to get to a much better place. So once you're in a better place, now you can get off of TRT if you prefer. Only if you prefer. Some people's like, I love TRT, I'm going to stay on TRT, I don't need to come off. So it's up to you if you want to stay on or come off, but you can. All right, so and then you can go from a long ester to topical or intranasal. This is a great way to PCT and to get off of it. So let's say you're using a long ester, like let's say even enanthate, right? So you will typically be suppressed for about 2 weeks after you stop testosterone enanthate. So for that time, doctors will recommend HCG or something like enclomiphene to kickstart your own levels of testosterone production. But what you can also do is you can actually use like a shorter ester testosterone, like topical testosterone or intranasal testosterone as a BCT. Because of the short half-life, let's say you use a topical testosterone for 2 to 3 to 4 weeks after the long ester. And then once you stop the topical, you will literally recover within like 2 or 3 days. Your own production will kickstart because of the short half-life of the topical. And then lastly, then you come off completely. Once you've PCT'd, you're off completely and then you're in a better place. And then obviously you want to retest, where's my LH, where's my testosterone? Am I actually better now than before? Because in some cases, some people, they just don't have high LH or they have some form of Leydig cell damage that hasn't been repaired by the TRT. So you want to make sure that your levels are recovering after TRT, that this actually worked. And so some people, for some reason, maybe it was just some form of permanent damage that is preventing their testes from producing enough testosterone, right? And they might need like a longer term testosterone replacement. So that is 2 ways how you can supercharge your progress by actually using TRT. You don't have to do it long term. You can literally do it temporarily. Point number one was to improve Leydig cell health by reducing reactive oxygen species. And according to that study, you can actually get higher levels of testosterone after TRT than you had before TRT, as long as you're doing everything right. Second point is by using TRT, you get more motivation and energy, and you just feel better. So you have the motivation and energy to do the right stuff. That will ensure that you have higher levels of testosterone after TRT. So I'm not opposed to TRT. I've not taken TRT myself or exogenous testosterone at higher doses, but I do think it could be a good experiment to do. Like, how do I feel when I actually start injecting testosterone? Do I feel different? So as I mentioned, I shared my results before. It's 1,200. So maybe I can try. Maybe I can see if I can get to 1,500 after doing TRT or something like that. But I do think that TRT can be utilized short-term to kickstart your progress. It doesn't have to be a long-term, lifelong thing. All right, guys, I hope this opened your eyes to the potential of using TRT in the short term. And I will check you in the next one. Cheers, guys.